My son's wife said, "We deserve that $43.00 more than her." The lawyer laughed, then opened a second envelope with my name. "You old hag are just a leech, sucking dry the money left by your dead husband. That $43 million belongs to us, not you." My daughter, in Law's voice cut through the stifling silence of the room like a sharp knife, dripping with contempt and fury. Her eyes flashed with a cruel fire as she glared straight at me, daring me to respond. The cold, sterile air in the conference room seemed to freeze in that moment, the weight of her words pressing down so heavily that I could barely breathe. I sat still, my hands trembling lightly in my lap, trying to steady my pounding heart as the room held its collective breath. Beside her, my son, my own flesh and blood, leaned forward with a sneer that broke my heart. "You don't deserve a single penny, Mom. You've been a disgrace to this family for far too long. Just go before you embarrass us all any further." His words were like thunderclaps, brutal and relentless, meant to shatter me. I remained seated, a statue of quiet endurance amid the storm of hostility. I felt their eyes burn into me, full of disdain, and yet I could not bring myself to move or speak. The pain was too raw, too deep. It clawed at my soul, pulling forth memories I had buried long ago, the years of sacrifice and love, the sweat and tears that had built the life and legacy they now so cruelly sought to erase. I thought of the long nights when I stayed awake, nursing my children through fevers, wiping away their tears, making sacrifices no one ever thanked me for. I remembered the endless days spent scrimping and saving every penny, making sure the roof stayed over their heads, food on the table, clothes on their backs, and yet here I was, reduced to a target of their venomous words, an unwanted relic in the way of their greed. The lawyer, sitting at the head of the table, cleared his throat and shuffled his papers, trying to maintain some semblance of order, but the damage was done. The tension in the room was suffocating. My daughter, in Law's smug smile, widened as if she had already won. My son's cold gaze never left me, as if daring me to fight back. But I held my silence, swallowing the lump in my throat, knowing that any reaction might only fuel their cruelty. My mind drifted back through the years, through every small kindness I had extended, every time I had swallowed my pride to keep the family together. I recalled the day my husband passed, the weight of grief settling on my shoulders, and how I had worked harder than ever to hold our lives together for the sake of our son. Yet none of that seemed to matter now. Their words echoed in my ears. Leech, disgrace, don't deserve a penny. I felt tears prickling at the edges of my eyes, but I blinked them back fiercely. No, I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Not here, not now. I glanced around the room. Faces that once showed love and respect were now twisted with contempt and greed. Cousins, aunts, uncles, some sat silently, others shifted uncomfortably, but none came to my defense. I was alone, surrounded by the family I had spent my life nurturing, now reduced to an enemy. My daughter, Law leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms with a triumphant smirk. "You see, we all know the truth. She's nothing but a hanger-on, waiting to grab whatever she can before she's gone." Her voice was venomous, sharp enough to cut through steel. My son nodded, his jaw tight with anger and shame. "Mom, you should be grateful we're even giving you a share, but don't think for a second you're going to get more than your worthless cut." The sting of their words settled deep in my chest, a bitter ache I had carried for too long. How had it come to this? How had the family I loved so dearly turned so cold, so cruel? I felt my hands clench, nails digging into my palms, trying to ground myself in the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. But beneath the pain, beneath the fear, something else stirred, a quiet flame of resolve. Their hatred, their disrespect, it was fuel for a fire I had long kept hidden, a fire that would not be extinguished by their venomous tongues. I took a slow, steadying breath, reminding myself that this was not the end of my story. It was merely the opening act in a play they did not understand I had been scripting all along. My eyes fixed on the lawyer as he finally began to speak, his voice calm and measured, the sound cutting through the tension. But my mind remained focused inward, on the memories and the plans I had guarded for so long. I thought of the late nights, poring over documents and contracts my husband and I had kept secret, investments made quietly, properties acquired under different names, assets hidden from prying eyes. I had done this to protect our family, knowing the greed that might arise one day. And now, that day had come. Their words had wounded me deeply, but their ignorance of what I truly possessed was their undoing. I would not let their cruelty be the final chapter. As the lawyer's voice continued, I sat there, heart pounding, breath steadying, waiting for the moment when the scales would finally tip, the moment when the truth, my truth, would be revealed. I was no longer the old woman they mocked. I was the keeper of secrets they could never imagine, the quiet force that would change everything. And so I waited, the silence stretching, the tension thickening, knowing that the story they thought they knew was about to unravel. In that moment, alone among them, yet stronger than ever, I vowed to myself that I would rise, not with anger or shouting, but with the quiet, unyielding strength that had carried me through decades of hardship. The room was filled with hostility, but I was filled with purpose. Their scorn would be their downfall, and my patience, my silence, would be the weapon that won this battle. My daughter, in-law, never hid her disdain for me, and honestly it stemmed from years of simmering resentment. From the moment she stepped into our lives, she saw me as an obstacle, a meddling old woman who dared to question her extravagant spending and careless ways. I remember the countless arguments we had, her voice sharp and unforgiving, accusing me of interfering where I had no right. She saw my concern as criticism, my love as control. The gulf between us grew wider with each passing year, and the tension was palpable every time we met. My son, caught in the crossfire, gradually adopted her view. He began to see me not as a mother who had sacrificed everything for him, but as a burden, financially draining, emotionally taxing. I watched him distance himself bit by bit, retreating into the cold embrace of his wife's ambitions. The man who once ran to me for comfort now barely spared me a glance. It was as if the years of love and care we shared had evaporated overnight, replaced by suspicion and disdain. This transformation cut deeper than any insult. I felt betrayed by the two people I had loved most in this world. My heart ached with the weight of their rejection, and for a long time I grappled with the urge to forgive, to bridge the gap with understanding. But every attempt at reconciliation was met with coldness, indifference, or worse, open hostility. The wounds they inflicted were too raw, the betrayal too profound. In the quiet moments, when the world seemed to fade away, I often found myself drifting back to memories of sacrifice. I remembered the young woman I once was, full of hope and determination, who had worked tirelessly to build a life for her family. The nights I stayed up sewing clothes and patching holes. The mornings I woke before dawn to prepare breakfast. The days spent juggling jobs to keep the bills paid. None of it was easy, but I did it all with love, expecting nothing in return but their happiness. Yet, despite it all, I was invisible to them, my efforts unseen, my love unacknowledged. Instead, I was cast aside like an old garment, worn out and no longer useful. The sting of that realization burned hotter than any harsh word. Loneliness wrapped around me like a heavy cloak, but beneath it simmered a quiet fire, a determination born from years of endurance. I knew I could not rely on their gratitude or change their hearts, so I turned inward, channeling my pain into patience and planning. If they would not honor me in life, I would ensure justice was served in time. I began to meticulously gather my strength, studying legal documents, consulting with trusted advisors, and quietly securing the legacy my husband and I had worked so hard to build. Every slight, every sneer, every cold shoulder became fuel for the resolve growing within me. I was no longer just the forgotten mother or the unwelcome mother-in-law. I was a woman with a plan, a quiet force ready to reclaim what was rightfully mine, not with anger or spite, but with calm, calculated determination. The wounds they inflicted would not break me. Instead, they forged the steel of my resolve, and when the time came, I would show them the true meaning of strength. The lawyer cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as he unfolded the worn document in front of him. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his voice steady but solemn. "We are here to read the last will and testament of your late father and husband." The room grew still, every pair of eyes fixated on him, the tension almost palpable. "According to the will, the estate shall be divided as follows: 40% to the son, 40% to the daughter-in-law and 20% to the widow. His words hung heavy in the air, signaling what many believed to be the final word on the matter. A murmur of relief and satisfaction rippled through some of the family members, especially from my daughter-in-law. She smirked, folding her arms triumphantly, as if the fight was already won. The son nodded, flashing a smug smile that barely masked his eagerness to put this chapter behind him. To them, the distribution was fair, more than enough to secure their futures, and just enough to keep me at bay. But the atmosphere quickly deteriorated as the reality sank in. Voices rose, accusations flew, and the room became a battlefield of bitterness and greed. My daughter-in-law was the first to break the fragile peace. 20%, she scoffed loudly, her eyes narrowing as they locked onto me. She's nothing but a parasite, a bloodsucker who's been draining this family dry for years. Her words pierced through me, cold and cruel. She leaned forward, her voice dripping with venom. Honestly, I don't know why anyone even bothers with her. She's an old woman living off what my father-in-law left behind, and she deserves nothing more than that. She glanced at my son for support, who only smirked and added fuel to the fire. You heard what I said, he said harshly. Mom, you need to leave. This house isn't yours anymore. If you don't go quietly, I won't hesitate to call the police. The threat was blatant. A final blow aimed at breaking my spirit. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of their hostility suffocating. I sat for a heartbeat, then slowly rose to my feet. The trembling in my hands steadied, my voice cutting through the chaos like a sharpened blade. You think this is the end? You think that's all there is to the estate? I said coldly, eyes sweeping across the stunned faces. There is a secret, one that none of you have yet seen. The lawyer's eyebrows raised slightly, intrigued but cautious. He reached under the table and pulled out a second envelope, thick and sealed with the unmistakable stamp of importance. This, he said, holding it up for all to see, is a supplementary document, part of the estate planning that was kept confidential until now. Gasps echoed around the room as he carefully opened the envelope. Inside were papers that revealed a hidden ownership, an entire chain of hotels and prime real estate, valued at $43 million, all held under my name, completely separate from the main estate. The shock was instantaneous. Faces paled, eyes widened, and murmurs turned into stunned silence. My daughter-in-law's smug expression vanished, replaced by disbelief and panic. My son's confident smirk faltered, his gaze darting nervously between me and the documents in the lawyer's hands. The power dynamic shifted dramatically in an instant. I was no longer the powerless old woman they had mocked. For the first time in the room, I felt the scales tip in my favor. I stood firm, heart steady, knowing that the years of quiet preparation had brought me to this very moment. The truth was out, and with it, the promise of justice that had long eluded me. Their world was cracking, and I was ready to watch it fall apart. The room was drenched in stunned silence as the lawyer carefully laid out the documents from the second envelope on the polished table. The papers bore official seals, signatures, and stacks of legal jargon, but one fact was clear and undeniable. A vast chain of hotels and prime real estate properties, all legally registered under my name. This was a separate entity entirely from the estate we had just heard about, the one my son and daughter-in-law had believed was the whole fortune. The value? $43 million. I could see the shock ripple through the room like a wave. My daughter-in-law's confident posture crumbled almost immediately. Her eyes widened in disbelief, mouth opening and closing as if searching for words that wouldn't come. My son looked as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet, his face drained of color, and his earlier bravado evaporated into uncertainty. I don't understand, my daughter-in-law stammered, trying desperately to regain control of the situation. How is this possible? Why weren't we told about this before? The lawyer cleared his throat. This property portfolio and associated businesses were set up nearly 25 years ago by the late Mr. Thompson and Mrs. Thompson, he said, nodding toward me respectfully. It was their intention to keep these assets separate from the family estate, precisely to protect them from internal disputes or claims that might arise. I took a slow breath, steadying my voice as I spoke. My husband and I anticipated that there could come a time when greed and misunderstanding might fracture the family. so we quietly formed an investment company to safeguard these assets. It was never about secrecy to hurt anyone. It was about protection. The room remained still, save for the restless shifting of my son and daughter, in-law. Their faces betrayed their growing desperation and disbelief. The lawyer continued. Mr. Thompson entrusted me with this secret before his passing. I was instructed to keep it confidential until a proper time, until it was clear that disclosing this information was necessary to fulfill their wishes and protect Mrs. Thompson's rights. My son's voice cracked as he struggled to mask his panic. So you're telling us, all this time, Mom was hiding this fortune from us? Why? How could she keep something so important secret? My daughter-in-law scoffed, shaking her head. She must have been playing us all along. I met their accusations with calm resolve. I was protecting what was ours. The years I spent silent were not years of hiding, but years of safeguarding a legacy built with hard work, sacrifice, and love. You saw only what you wanted, the easy targets, the aging woman to dismiss and ignore, but beneath that surface, there was a plan. Their eyes darted between me and the documents, disbelief turning to frustration. The room's tension escalated as the realization dawned on them they had been blindsided, their assumptions shattered. You think this changes anything? My son spat bitterly, his voice tinged with fear and anger. You think just because you have money hidden away you can just throw your weight around? But his words fell flat in the thick air. The balance of power had shifted, and for once, I held the upper hand. The family who had once looked down on me now had to reckon with a truth they never expected. Their confusion and helplessness filled the room, but inside me bloomed a quiet triumph. The years of silent endurance and patience had brought me here, to the moment when my hidden strength would be revealed. No longer would I be dismissed, no longer overlooked. The woman they scorned was the one standing tallest now, a keeper of secrets that no one could take away. And as their faces betrayed the growing panic of their loss, I knew this was only the beginning. The room was still reeling from the revelation of the hidden real estate fortune when the lawyer reached under the table once more. This time, his hands emerged holding a smaller, more discreet envelope, one that seemed almost insignificant compared to the thick bundle of papers already laid out. Yet, the weight of what it contained was far greater than its size suggested. He held it carefully, as if it were fragile and precious, then slowly broke the seal. There is one more document that was kept confidential at the express request of Mrs. Thompson's late husband, he announced, his voice measured, but carrying a sense of gravity that drew every eye to him. From inside the envelope, he pulled out a series of patent documents and contracts, their crisp pages adorned with legal stamps and signatures. These papers detail the ownership of a proprietary invention co-created by Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, the lawyer explained. This invention was developed over many years of research and experimentation, and the rights were sold to a major corporation for $43 million. The room fell into stunned silence. My daughter-in-law's lips parted, her earlier confidence now completely shattered. My son's face twisted in disbelief and confusion as he struggled to process the new information. I took a deep breath and began to speak, my voice calm but firm. I was once a self-taught engineer, a woman who never stopped learning and creating. My husband and I worked side by side, dedicating countless hours to this project. It was our secret, our labor of love, and a part of the legacy we built together, the lawyer added. The proceeds from the sale of these patents were transferred directly into a confidential account, controlled solely by Mrs. Thompson. The agreement includes strict non-disclosure clauses to protect the interests of the inventors. I nodded, feeling a surge of quiet pride. This money was never meant to be shared freely or casually. It was safeguarded as part of the larger plan to protect Mrs. Thompson's financial independence and ensure the security of our family's future. The shock in the room deepened. My daughter-in-law's usual quick retorts faltered into silence. My son seemed lost, as if the ground beneath him was crumbling. The very foundation of their assumptions was being dismantled piece by piece. For years they had dismissed me as just an old woman, irrelevant and powerless. Yet here was the undeniable proof of a life spent building something extraordinary, something they had never imagined. The lawyer carefully laid the documents on the table alongside the earlier papers, sealing the truth in a way that no argument could overturn. The family's stunned silence spoke volumes, an unspoken acknowledgement of their defeat. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of vindication. The path had been long and lonely, but every sacrifice had led to this: justice delivered not with loud accusations or bitter quarrels, but with undeniable truth and unwavering resolve. No one could now deny the legacy I carried, the strength I embodied, or the rightful place I held in this family, and in the wealth that was mine. As the weight of the revelation settled over us, I knew that their disbelief was the last barrier to fall. The story they thought they knew had changed forever, and with it, so had the course of our lives. He cleared his throat once more, signaling that there was one final, crucial piece of the estate to be revealed. His voice was calm but carried the weight of authority as he addressed the gathered family. There is a special clause within the will that must be made known to all parties involved, he began, his eyes briefly meeting mine before scanning the room. Any individual who, during the process of this estate dispute, engages in insulting, humiliating, or demeaning behavior toward Mrs. Thompson shall forfeit their right to inherit any portion of the estate. Sank in. The gravity of the clause was unmistakable. It was a legal safeguard designed not only to protect my dignity, but also to ensure that respect was maintained throughout the proceedings. It was a boundary none could cross without consequence. "That's ridiculous. You can't just silence us like that," she spat venomously. "We have the right to speak our minds about her. She's been a burden, a manipulator." Her voice was loud and angry, but there was a flicker of hesitation beneath it, an unspoken fear of the consequences. Strained. His jaw clenched tightly as he stared daggers at me. "This is just another trick to keep us from standing up for ourselves," he said bitterly, though there was little conviction behind his words. The weight of the law bore down on them, forcing a reluctant silence, quiet, unwavering resolve. "I have endured years of disrespect and betrayal," I said calmly, "but I will not allow my dignity to be trampled any longer. This estate, these assets, are mine to protect, and I will do so with every legal means available. I honor the wishes of my late husband and the sacrifices we made together by ensuring these assets serve a greater purpose." I looked back at the family, my voice steady and clear. "A significant portion of the estate will be set aside for the woman who has stood by me through thick and thin, my loyal housekeeper, and for a charitable foundation dedicated to supporting elderly women who, like me, have been forgotten and abandoned." The realization that they would receive nothing but empty hands hit them hard. Their frustration was palpable, but there was nothing they could do against the binding legal protections. The damage to their reputations. Friends, neighbors, and even the wider community soon learned of their greed and ingratitude. The harsh judgment of society settled heavily upon them, a public reckoning that was as bitter as the legal one. For me, justice had been served, not with vengeance or malice, but through the steady, deliberate application of truth and law. The years of quiet endurance had culminated in this moment of triumph. I was a woman restored to her rightful place, protector of a legacy built on love and hard work. I knew that this was not just a victory for me, it was a message to anyone who would dare to belittle, dismiss, or betray the strength of a woman who refused to be broken. Revelations about the estate spread quickly through the tight-knit community. At first, my son and daughter-in-law tried to keep things quiet, hoping the matter would fade away like a passing storm. But gossip travels fast in small towns, and soon their names were whispered with disdain in neighbors' homes, local shops, and church gatherings. Eyes filled with judgment and disappointment. Friends who had smiled at them at social events now greeted them with cold nods, or worse, silence. Invitations to gatherings ceased, and casual conversations turned into pointed remarks about greed and ingratitude. The social fabric that once embraced them unraveled rapidly. Suffered. Local businesses hesitated to associate with them, and the shadow of scandal cast doubt over their character. The story became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of how family bonds can be broken by selfishness and cruelty. My daughter-in-law's confident demeanor cracked, revealing cracks of fear and bitterness. She found herself isolated, her social circle shrinking as judgment closed in. The sting of public condemnation gnawed at her pride, and her frustration often turned to angry outbursts aimed at anyone within reach. She became withdrawn, haunted by the realization that his own actions had severed the ties that once bound him to his family and community. At times he was overcome with guilt, reflecting on how he had turned against his mother. Yet, that guilt was often clouded by bitterness. Bitterness at the loss of control. Bitterness at being powerless against the consequences he had brought upon himself. From the fallout, neighbors questioning previous dealings, family friends who had been caught in the middle seeking clarity. The fractures extended beyond just our family, touching others in ways unforeseen. A silent observer, watching the storm unfold. My heart was calm, my spirit lightened by the knowledge that justice had been served. I had weathered their cruelty and emerged whole, my dignity intact and my legacy secure. Yet satisfaction that truth and fairness had prevailed, where once there was only deception and disdain. From the outside looking in, I saw the consequences of their choices clearly, and with that clarity came a sense of peace, free, and in that freedom I found my strength renewed. Forward, not with bitterness or revenge, but with grace and purpose, ready to embrace whatever the future held. Pride in my eyes. The burden that had weighed on me for so many years, the weight of being dismissed, scorned, and pushed aside, was finally lifted. Justice had been served, not with loud declarations or anger, but with the steady, unyielding truth. The legacy my husband and I had carefully built was finally recognized and respected. It was a victory far sweeter than I had ever imagined. Fate provided, I decided to dedicate myself to a cause much larger than personal wealth. I established a foundation focused on supporting elderly women who, like me, had been forgotten, abandoned, or left to face life's hardships alone. Women who had been cast aside by their families, ignored by society, and left to battle loneliness and despair in silence. Did warm blankets and nutritious meals, offered companionship and medical assistance, and created safe spaces where these women could gather, share their stories, and reclaim their dignity. Each gift given, each hand held, was a tribute to resilience, the same resilience that had carried me through my darkest hours. This I had felt for so long. It brought me joy and peace in a way that money alone never could. I discovered that true wealth lies in kindness and connection, in the power to uplift others and create a ripple of change. Life I now live, one free from the chains of betrayal, free from the bitterness that once threatened to consume me. No longer am I bound by the harsh judgments and cruelty of those who once sought to diminish me. I walk with my head held high, carrying the strength of all I have endured, practically and with purpose. I have reclaimed my voice, my dignity, and my peace. The freedom to be myself without fear or apology is a treasure beyond measure. I want to say this: never let anyone make you believe you are less than you are. Your life is a tapestry woven with experience, wisdom, and courage. Hold tight to that truth, for it is your greatest strength that define us, but the love we give, the battles we overcome, and the grace with which we carry ourselves. Full of gratitude and hope, knowing that justice, compassion, and resilience will always guide the way forward. New life. Something unexpected came my way, an opportunity that promised not just personal renewal, but the chance to transform the lives of countless other women like me. It began with a letter, elegant and formal, from a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering senior women who had faced neglect, abandonment, or hardship. They had heard whispers of my story, the quiet battle I had fought and won, and they wanted me to join them as a spokesperson and ambassador. Never been in my plans, especially not now, in what many would consider the twilight of my years. The thought of standing before strangers, sharing the wounds I had so carefully guarded, felt daunting. Yet beneath the fear, there stirred a flicker of something else, a deep longing to turn my pain into purpose, to make sure my journey was not in vain, a world I had never imagined. From the very first event, I was surrounded by women whose faces reflected stories similar to my own, women who had been silenced by age, dismissed by family, and forgotten by society. We shared our struggles and our triumphs, our fears and our hopes. It was a community bound by resilience and a fierce determination to reclaim dignity and respect. I spoke at conferences, community centers, and even legislative forums, using my voice to shine a light on the issues affecting elderly women. issues of financial security, healthcare access, social isolation, and legal rights. Each story I told was a thread weaving us closer together, creating a tapestry of shared strength. Betrayal and loss in front of audiences was emotionally taxing. There were days when the memories weighed heavily, threatening to overwhelm me. But every tear shed was met with the warmth of understanding, the solidarity of others who had walked similar paths. Their strength became my shield, their courage fueled my resolve. And healthcare professionals, advocating for policies that would protect and empower older women. Together, we pushed for improved eldercare services, legal reforms to safeguard against exploitation, and programs to combat loneliness and depression. My own experience gave weight to the cause, turning abstract issues into a human story that could not be ignored. Long dormant, the orator, the leader, the mentor. I took young women under my wing, guiding those who had yet to find their voices. I saw the power of shared stories to heal, to inspire action, and to build bridges across generations. I grew as well, bolstered by the awareness and support generated through my advocacy. We expanded our reach, bringing comfort and companionship to more lives, proving that age does not diminish one's capacity to impact the world. Once engulfed me became a distant memory. I was no longer just a survivor of cruelty and neglect. I was a beacon of hope, a testament to resilience and grace. Each step I took in this new journey reaffirmed that life's purpose could evolve, that even in later years, new chapters could be written with meaning and joy. Self became a rallying cry. To every woman who felt invisible or unvalued, I said, "Your life is precious, your voice matters, and your journey is far from over. Do not let anyone define your worth or dictate your future." I found not just a second chance, but a mission that transcended personal triumph. It was a legacy of empowerment, a gift of courage passed on to those who would come after. Purpose, I stepped into this new chapter, not as the woman they once dismissed, but as a force for change, a living proof that no matter the hardships, strength and dignity endure. It changed how I saw myself. It reminded me that the true measure of a life well lived is not in possessions or wealth, but in the difference we make and the love we leave behind. And a joy that no betrayal could ever take away. Light, I often find myself reflecting on the journey that brought me here, the trials endured, the wounds healed, and the unexpected blessings found along the way. Growing older is a path filled with its own unique challenges, but also with profound opportunities for growth, understanding, and grace. I want you to know this. Your life holds immeasurable value. The years you have lived are rich with wisdom earned through experience, resilience forged in hardship, and love given without condition. Though society may sometimes overlook us, we carry within us stories that can inspire generations and lessons that can shape the future. Diminished by the passing of time or the loss of those once close, but do not let these feelings define you. Instead, see each wrinkle as a map of battles fought and victories won, each gray hair as a crown of survival and strength. To find purpose, to embrace new passions, or to speak your truth. Our voices, though sometimes quieted, are powerful beyond measure. They carry the weight of history and the light of hope. Hold fast to your dignity. Do not let anyone, no matter how close or distant, make you doubt your worth. You are more than the years behind you. You are the sum of your courage, your kindness, and your spirit. Solace in small joys, a warm cup of tea, the laughter of children, the beauty of a sunset. These moments are reminders that life's richness is not measured by wealth or status, but by the love and peace we cultivate within. Later chapters, life can surprise us with new beginnings, healing, and unexpected grace. You are valued and you are deeply loved. Your journey matters and your legacy is alive in the hearts of those who come after. And your strength will continue to shine as a guiding light for all who follow. Patience and quiet strength that led me to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Life may bring hardship, betrayal, and heartbreak, but it also offers resilience, justice, and hope for those who dare to hold on. If my journey has touched your heart or inspired you, please subscribe to Grandma True Stories, where real voices share real truths from the quietest women in the room. Together, we honor strength, wisdom, and the power of truth. Don't miss the next story, because every voice deserves to be heard.